Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I'm going to talk about why English is the best language on earth. Now you might assume that I have a bit of bias because this is the language I grew up speaking and therefore the one I like the most. However, it's not just that. I won't deny that my familiarity with the language is a huge part of why I like it, and also that I don't really have a talent for languages. I've tried and failed on several occasions to pick up a second language. I'm bad. I have a bad brain and a bad non-functional tongue that just doesn't do certain sounds. However, my inability to grasp other languages is not the reason they're bad. The reason they are bad is because they are not English. Now, just hear me out for a minute. So, English is the most widely spoken language in the world in terms of both the number of speakers, the number of countries that speak it, and the number of places where it's taught as a default second language. It's also the most universally used language. For a number of geopolitical reasons, English is the default language for international communication between two nations that otherwise would not share a language. It's also the only accepted language for air traffic control, which means that all pilots and all air traffic controllers all across the world speak English all day. If you were to take a flight from Japan to Turkey, you probably wouldn't pass through any English-speaking nations along the way, but the whole time, your pilot and every air traffic tower they pass would be communicating in English. And it's not just air traffic control, this is also the standard for things like international banking, mostly because the dollar is the de facto currency that people fall back on in banking, but that's separate. Well, partially separate. And again, this largely has to do with a lot of geopolitics stuff and not anything about the quality of the language. People didn't sit around a room and say, okay, what language is the most fun to learn and easy to speak and stuff. Fair. Not going to deny. Fair. But they still chose English. And that decision isn't likely to be reversed anytime soon. So if you want to be able to communicate with the largest number of people across the globe, you're going to learn English. And that very fact is why English is the most taught second language in the world. For example, if you've ever watched anime, you may have seen people reading passages from English books in their high schools, because all anime are set in a high school for some reason. I mean, not literally all of them, but so many. Well, that's because literally every Japanese high school teaches English, and they make you read passages in English as part of that. Now, how effective that program is, most Japanese people are not fluent English speakers, but it is taught in every high school, and Japan is far from the only country that does that. So the fact that it's broad-reaching gives you a greater chance that you'll actually be able to communicate with someone, and the fact that it's mandatory for certain jobs means that if you want to do one of those jobs, you have to learn it. But that is not enough to make it the best language. Being the most commonly used doesn't make it the best. Things that aren't good just because they're popular. But the thing about English is it's not just popular, it's adapting to other languages as we speak. And more importantly, it always has been adapting to other languages. One of the things that people who have never tried to learn Japanese will complain about when learning English is that the spelling is complicated. And, I mean, we only have one writing system instead of 3, so you don't get to fucking say that. But fair dues, there are other languages that are more simple and regular in their spelling than English. However, 2 things about that. 1, English has a system for integrating words from other languages and maintaining their original spelling, kind of. And 2, literally every word you have trouble spelling is a French word that we took in under that system. No, I'm not exaggerating. They're all French. Literally every word that has a GH or 3 vowels in a row or a weird vowel that's silent even though it probably shouldn't be silent. Yeah, all of those are French. And they're all spelled that way because that's how the French spelled them. And you may be wondering why 40% of the English language is actually French, and it's because 400 years ago when English was new, well, newer than it is now, England got conquered by a bunch of French Vikings. And no, I'm not kidding. Vikings, raided all over Europe. France was like, hey, stop raiding us and we'll give you this land. And then the Vikings settled there. And then 4 generations later, after they got all Frenchy, they invaded England and took over. And That's the line of kings that is still in charge of England. It's no wonder the British are always fighting the French. They hate what they are. And that's why we have different words for things, right? Like in most languages, cow meat is, cow meat. But in English, it's beef because beef is a French word because the French aristocracy only saw the end product and only used their word for it, whereas the English peasant farmers only saw the animal and only used their word for it. And that's why we have pork from pigs and chicken from chickens, because there's a difference in the kind of food. Yeah, anyway. My point is that all of the things you hate about English, you should blame it on the French. It's actually the French's fault. Every time you have problems understanding a word and why are there 4 consonants in a row, it's French. That it's a French word, it's their fault. Now, could we undergo some sort of broad spelling reform to fix the problems that France inflicted upon us? Maybe. Is it going to happen? Definitely not. But the cool thing is, France isn't the only language that English takes from liberally. When we rediscovered classical literature, we also started taking a bunch of words from Latin and ancient Greek. Of course, all that French stuff is derived from Latin, so that just kind of increases the amount of French influence in the language, really, but whatever. And when the languages moved over to other countries, right, like when we came to America, we adopted a bunch of Native American words, like moose. You ever wonder why moose isn't plural, the way goose is? Well, it's because geese exist in Europe, and moose don't. And moose is a Native American word. So that's why you can have 1 moose, 2 moose, 3 moose, because the language that moose comes from doesn't have plurals. And we never change it to meese the way we would for German descended words, because we don't. It's not German descended, so we don't do that. Which, by the way, that's why sometimes when you pluralize a word, it becomes like a different vowel, because German does that, and English is descended from German, and so we kept that for a while before we created a new thing to line up with all the new French words. But the new thing that we added didn't replace the old thing. It just, became the new default. So words like mice or geese or feet that descended from Old High German still get the vowel declination that they did. Whereas all the French words and all the words that got developed after we made that shift just get an S slapped onto the end. ES if there's already a consonant at the end, because for some reason that's the one case where we don't want too many consonants. But English didn't just stop evolving after we rediscovered classic literature or expanded to new continents. English is still evolving. People in America regularly mix in German, Japanese, and Spanish to their everyday English conversations. Most of the time they just replace a word that they would normally say in English to be funny. Like they'll say hola instead of hello, because why not? But sometimes it goes a little bit deeper than that. Sometimes we make puns involving foreign languages. We get a lot of mileage out of the fact that the number 9 is pronounced the same as the German word for no. There's a lot of puns involving that. And the more English, interacts with other cultures, the more that kind of thing happens. 20 years ago in America, no one knew words like kawaii and senpai, but now you can hear them on national television sometimes. By the way, is there anything more cringe than newscasters trying to use kid slang? Ugh. It's especially brutal because it isn't even like what actual young people do. It's what people my age do. And they're just like, oh, this is what the kids say. And like, no, this is what the 28-year-olds say. Fucking cringe. But, as time moves on and the world becomes more interconnected and more dependent on the English language in general, that blending of culture and words will only continue until English is the international auxiliary language, because it does contain elements from every language on Earth, or all the ones that still exist anyway. The writing is on the wall, and we all know what language it's written in. This is going to take some time, Obviously, English will be very different at that point than it is now, but it's going to happen. And I, for one, think it's really cool that there's a language out there that can just incorporate other languages and become the default. Because then, humans can communicate with each other without language barriers. That'd be nice. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Leave your comments down below about why I'm a dumb, wrong idiot and actually this other language is better because it was constructed or whatever. And also, no, the Chinese language is not going to take over the world. For one thing, there are like 5 Chinese languages, and they don't really work well with each other. And for another thing, China's a brutal, evil dictatorship that nobody wants to interact with, so obviously their language isn't going to spread out over the world. But yeah, laters. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have like no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it, so oh well. Okay, thanks, bye!